In your new report for the Austin American-Statesman, you obtained handwritten notes from Governor Greg Abbott when he was initially briefed by officials on the shooting. What can you tell us about those notes?
Well, Jonathan, first of all, it's noteworthy that among dozens of requests that we have submitted, as well as news outlets across the country, one piece of information that has been released is, in fact, the governor's handwritten notes that he was taking during his initial briefing the day after the shooting. The governor has said that he was misled during that briefing. And so we wanted to compare what his public comments were with his notes, and as well as that, talk to several sources who were inside that room as well. And one of the things that we were able to determine is that apparently, yes, he was in fact given misinformation during that initial briefing. But in addition to that, when he made his public comments based on what people inside that room told us, he also seemed to take what he was told a step further, really relying upon a narrative that he has used before with regard to the heroism and quick response of law enforcement.
You know, another character in all this is Chief Arredondo. Has he surfaced? He's a city councilor now, and as far as anyone will tell us, still head of the school police force.
It continues to be noteworthy that the school superintendent, as well as the school board, have not taken the step of placing him on any sort of administrative leave, leaving him to still function as the leader of the school police force at a time when he is at the core of this huge state investigation as well as federal investigation. So far, he continues to make precious few public statements, and it remains to be seen the degree to which he is cooperating with the investigations that are going on. And for that matter, we continue to get word about Uvalde city police officers and the degree to which they are cooperating with an ongoing investigation by a Texas House committee. We heard today that they were going to testify, possibly not. We are now being told that they are to appear before this committee on Monday. But as you mentioned, that is expected to be secret, private testimony.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the police response, because I'm wondering, is there any investigation that is specifically looking into the police response, and when might someone somewhere provide some answers?
Well, there is an ongoing investigation into the actions of those law enforcement officials. But again, the way that these investigations have been described publicly is more of an after-action report, that there is no criminal investigation and, frankly, no suspicion as we sit here tonight of any sort of criminal wrongdoing among those police officers, those responding police officers. But Jonathan, kind of circling back to where we started, that makes it even more confusing that law enforcement is not releasing the information that they have in their possession right now that could truly help the public and the parents of the victims of that shooting fully understand what happened that awful day.
Tony, what about the FBI? What are they doing in their look-see at what happened in Uvalde?
Again, it's really being described as an after-action report, not something that could possibly result in any sort of criminal charges, but a lessons learned. What could possibly be taken from what happened in Uvalde and applied in the future, particularly with regard to law enforcement training, to hopefully stop something like this from ever happening again.